Being wedged right between Psycho and Halloween, the original entry in the Texas Chainsaw franchise is often considered a misunderstood art house horror masterpiece, representing a more artistically valuable side of the often exploitative slasher subgenre and being beloved by film geeks the world over. While critics back in the day found it depraved and repulsive and hated it, today's critics and fans alike find it depraved and repulsive and love it. The brutal, bleak subject matter of the film is now viewed with a more analytical eye, rather than a squeamish one. It's clear to see, though, how this movie could turn away or traumatize certain viewers, especially in an era before the likes of Terrifier, as it emanates a sense of pure fear from its very opening text crawl. The ominous voice of John Larroquette sets the film up here as if it were depicting a real crime, perfectly establishing the tone alongside the ensuing unsettling imagery of defaced corpses, accompanied by this iconic sound effect. This cold, calculated introduction is a brilliant way to draw us into a sense of discomfort and unease, showing us the bleak reality of the world we live in and catalyzing an otherworldly mixture of disgust and awe as we see this truly breathtaking shot of two dug-up corpses on top of a gravestone. Indicative of the entire movie, this shot is brutal, disgusting, filthy, and disturbing, yet oddly gorgeous and mystifying. The morbid theme of death is omnipresent in this film, from ghastly shots of roadkill to the sounds of crime stories from around the country playing on our main character's car radio. It brings us into an era of fear and violence, which plays into the broader themes of the film's narrative as well. We're introduced to our cast of characters who are in many ways forgettable, but they feel like real people, and their lack of memorable personalities counts toward the eventual dehumanization that they suffer from at the hands of their future killers. Immediately, the movie contrasts shots of these characters in their car with the cattle in a slaughterhouse, both captive prey stuck in a metal purgatory, awaiting their inevitable death at the hands of a more merciless master. Symbolism is all over the place in this movie, and when our characters pick up a mentally disturbed hitchhiker who used to work at the slaughterhouse, this becomes even more clear. The hitchhiker is perfectly unhinged the whole time, and this entire segment with him is absolutely iconic and uncomfortable. It's just awkward enough to make me feel uneasy without becoming dumb or over the top. However, what always stuck out to me here is when the character of Franklin talks with him about the slaughterhouse and how they now kill animals with an air gun to be more humane, but is met with this psychotic answer.
Well, how come? I thought the gun was better.
Oh, no. With the new way people put out of jobs.
He prefers the sledgehammer. It was his job, but now he's unemployed, all because of that damn airgun. It's such a simple line, but it really reminds me of the impact of an economy based on cruelty and menial labor. Eventually, the sequence erupts with the hitchhiker attacking Franklin with a knife and being kicked out of the van, made quite riveting by the frantic camera shots, experimental angles, and once again the perfectly unhinged performance of the hitchhiker himself, making him such a truly scary individual on account of his nonsensical behavior. The cinematography as well is phenomenal throughout the entire film, contrasting a desolate industrial takeover with more lush natural areas that have been left behind. Also, the fact that Franklin references Dracula here as a scary figure is quite funny to me, since pretty much none of the famous horror icons we know today even existed back when this film came out. It's truly staggering to think about how this movie is 50 years old, yet still so entertaining and relevant. Speaking of Franklin, he's an often reviled character, and while I agree that he's somewhat annoying, I also sympathize with how he feels left behind and mistreated by the other characters. Life as a disabled person back then must have been extremely tough, so I don't really blame him for being an annoying little shit. It's quite clever how the old family home of Franklin and his sister Sally is such an unsettling, dilapidated location, as it totally misleads us into thinking that it will be the setting of the brutality and horror yet to come, and has us let our guards down when this couple comes upon the idyllic-looking Sawyer house. The film is masterful in terms of pacing, not having anything too crazy happen in the first act, instead building up the air of something being seriously wrong, which eventually culminates in the deadly temptation that is this strange country home. Similar to other haunted settings of urban legend, the Sawyer house is an iconic, terrifying zenith that seems unassuming from the outside, but is an unprecedented, bizarre horror show on the inside. This leads us into the amazing first death in the film, which comes out of nowhere and is iconic for many reasons. The setting of the house, the horrifying, uncanny sounds of pigs squealing, the unforgettable visual of seeing Leatherface for the first time, and the impact when he takes the body into that hypnotic, intimidating red room and slams the door shut, letting an ethereal sound ring out. Continuing its artistic streak, this shot of his girlfriend walking up to the house is similarly memorable, showcasing her timid, naive innocence and how it's about to be shattered. She comes upon all this furniture made of bones and human remains, being some of the best props in any movie if you ask me, and being scarier and more successful in building atmosphere than the actual antagonists of many other horror films. Especially that skeleton couch. I mean, I don't want to sound like J.D. Vance or anything, but I don't think I'll ever get my head out of it. I mean, get it out of my head. The girl is soon attacked by Leatherface, and I absolutely love how we're shown this shot from the outside where she's grabbed and taken back in. So close to freedom, it makes us really feel like she had a chance and makes her failure to flee so much more impactful. It's here in this next part of her being put on a meat hook that two extremely important aspects of the film become clear. First is the lack of music, as the movie is instead decorated with grating, uncanny sounds of industry and nature alike, removing any cinematic quality and making it feel more like something real. And the second thing that you'll notice is the lack of basically any gore or blood at all, which stems from the absurd original intent of director Tobe Hooper to get this film a PG rating. And though that obviously didn't work out, it actually benefits the film regardless, as it forces us to imagine the details of the violence and allows our minds to focus on the actual impact of the cruelty on display rather than the superficial bloodshed. Especially in this scene in particular, seeing her put on the meat hook makes me uncomfortable, and the fact she then has to watch her boyfriend get chopped up with a chainsaw is successfully disturbing, whereas a more gory version would have just made me disgusted rather than disturbed, ignoring the emotional implications. The film also makes great use of time, putting us at ease with beautiful shots of the sunset, but simultaneously making us feel anxious with the prospect of a looming, deadly nighttime. This, combined with the way that Franklin frantically asks his sister and the remaining friend if the hitchhiker is following them, really reminds me of relatable feelings of paranoia and danger that stem from the natural impulse to overthink any threat around me. So many details like this stand out as so clever, such as during the next kill, where we see an almost equal amount of shock and horror from the victim as from Leatherface, reminding us of the fact that technically, from Leatherface's perspective, this is a home invasion movie. Maybe he just saw the strangers and got a little too defensive. We're soon sent into the final act as night falls, which just shows how action-packed and well-paced this movie is, and the scene of Sally and Franklin exploring in the dark forest together, everything being suspiciously quiet, eventually leading to a super effective jump scare with a nightmare-inducing look, is one of my absolute favorites. No matter how many times I watch it, it always freaks me out.
Sally, I hear something. Stop. Stop.
This incites one of the most amazing chase scenes in all of horror, which more effectively conveys the terror of being chased by a psychopath in the middle of the night while all alone in the middle of nowhere than any movie I've ever seen. Especially this part where she runs into the house and locks the door, but he just fucking cuts it down. This part got to me on such a deep level, removing the feeling of security that we feel in our homes, locked in safe areas, and showing us the ambition of such depraved individuals, very much in the vein of home invasion films. This is helped by the fact that Sally is a very smart character willing to take any action necessary to survive, including jumping out of a damn window, which removes any plausible deniability that would exist with a dumber main character. Many like to say that if they were in a horror movie, they'd easily survive, but in this one, I'm doubtful. The tension never stops building, and even a seeming moment to catch our breaths in the gas station turns into a horrifying twist as the friendly gas station owner turns out to be a member of the psychotic antagonist family, tormenting Sally and dehumanizing her by repeatedly whacking her with a broom like some sort of vermin. This also removes any sense of security and trust from the movie, making us feel truly unsafe and terrified. In the grand finale of the film, rather than a bombastic fight, we're shown Sally trapped in the family's kitchen as they eat dinner. and knowing how the crew of the movie endured 120-degree heat, often in costume, the smells of rotting meat, and every filming challenge under the hot Texas sun for almost 30 straight hours to make this scene happen, I really appreciate the fact that it exists. What a great scene it is, with so many moving parts and details to look at. We can immediately take note of how the patriarch of the family berates and abuses the others, including Leatherface, showcasing their twisted family dynamic and how this story isn't really about a natural-born psychotic killer, but a family torn apart by a horrific, desperate life. Additionally, the cinematography here is some of the best I've ever seen. It's amazing in the rest of the movie, but here it's transcendent. The crazed, uncomfortable close-ups of Sally's eyes making her out to be like a rabid wild animal, the shot of these headlights representing the turmoil and uncertainty in the future of the Sawyer family, and especially the shot of this skeleton framed diagonally from the soon-to-be skeleton. It's all so damn good. This moment as well, in which they cut open Sally's finger and feed her blood to this corpse they call Grandpa, is absolutely horrifying, as I was totally convinced that he was just a dead body, but he suddenly comes alive and starts moving in an unsettling way, which is the definition of fucked up. Overall, this dinner scene is a pure masterclass. Frantic, avant-garde shots, an ominous, horrific setting, the depraved acting of all the family members, and the nightmarish atmosphere and set design all combine to make for an unforgettable exercise in horror cinema. The way Sally pleads and cries yet is met with rejection and menace also makes us feel so sympathetic for her and draws us into the terror, as these monsters exist with no logic. They're totally unpredictable and insane, and this brings those ideas of dehumanization full circle. Not to mention this line.
I understand you ain't nothing. Me and him do all the work. I just can't take no pleasure in killing.
Which hints towards the film's themes too, showing how the orchestrators and leaders of vile, violent actions are often manipulators, incapable of themselves partaking in the horror they incite, much like how the beneficiaries of war never participate in it, instead sending others to kill or be killed. The final chase is pure tension, making us wonder if Sally will survive or merely become another victim, and due to the odds being stacked heavily against her and the fact she's made it so far, we really root for her. One could critique the rushed feel of the scene with the trucker, as there's a lack of dialogue and it's a bit messy, but I think that reflects well on this movie's disorienting, terrifying feel, and with the contrast of the two final shots, a wild, illogical dance from Leatherface, and an understandable, emotionally impactful sense of relief from Sally, the central idea of the film is perfectly immortalized. I think it's pretty obvious, but I fucking love this movie. It's smart, brutal, and entertaining. It appeals to horror hounds who want to see brutality and feel dirty, to analytical viewers looking for thematic substance, and to normal viewers wishing to have fun. This is one of the finest horror classics out there, and one of my favorites of all time. A clear 5 out of 5.